Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I really am delighted to be joined all the way from Japan by Liam Carrigan. We're also joined by Lawrence Conley dialing in from the Skylark. The Skylark for a pre-match was used at the weekend. Lawrence, how did that go?
It was great. I had Brian round before he went off to the game, and then Big Red was round, and a couple of bottles of whiskey were finished. So celebrating a rampant performance by Celtic.
A rampant indeed. If a couple of bottles of whiskey were consumed in my presence, I would still be lying under the bar. Lawrence, so fair play to you. Big Red, of course, you might see him popping into the comment section. And Brian is indeed Brian Degnan, our resident Swindon CSC member who has been on Acsom for a number of seasons. This is our fifth season going into the old live streams. We have been kicking about now for 7 years, and we have seen players within that period go for 25 million quid. We're talking today about Matt O'Reilly. We've got to start off the conversation, Liam. It's quite clear the club are in talks with at least one club over the departure of our talismanic midfield player, Matt O'Reilly. I want to qualify this straight off the bat. I don't want us to sell him. I think we should keep our best asset. I think we should build a team around him. I think we've had a glimpse, a tiny little glimpse, a glimmer of what could be done with him and Hatate both playing at the top of their game, and I like what I've seen. I wouldn't sell him. That's the first thing I would qualify, but the club are in talks with clubs, Liam. And I'm saying here, I'm going to go back to the comments made by Brendan Rodgers last week, and he says that football clubs often value players based on the league that they're playing in, not on the quality of the individual. And I think that's what we are facing at the moment, and if we don't get something as high in terms of a bid as £30 million, keep him. That's what I'm saying. What's your take, Liam?
Totally agree. 30 million should be the starting point for discussion. The actual final fee should be significantly more than that, because not only is he a great player, but he's a great player that we know is wanted by multiple clubs in the Big Five leagues. Mm-hmm. Atlanta have had 3 bids rejected. Chelsea are apparently interested. Brighton are interested. Southampton expressed an interest a while ago. These are all clubs that can afford to pay 30 million plus. And like I say, that should be the starting point. I kind of half jokingly, half serious made the point that if Brighton were going to say, want him, I'd say, okay, give us money plus Mitoma and you can have him. Because I think that's the caliber of player we would need to replace Matt O'Reilly. And also that is the level that we should be dealing at. Quickly shot down when I was reminded by fellow contributors that Mitoma's on 80 grand a week. But again, we can afford to pay that now. And we should be, if we're going to be serious about the Champions League, we need to be operating in that bracket.
Big thing for me, Liam. As I said, and I'll continually go back to it, I've had a discussion previously with Colin Watt about what if we changed our strategy just that little bit and we kept our players on a longer cycle. Since we had that discussion, I think the cycle's actually shortened. It used to be maybe 3 seasons, and it's getting smaller and smaller, Lawrence. We know where we are in the food chain, but Brendan Rodgers has spoken about that Celtic experience that we can sell to players, right? We also have success. Players generally, it doesn't matter how much money they make, generally not many of them win a lot of trophies. If you come to Celtic, you've got that success. That's a selling point. You do have the Champions League platform. And of course, the final one is that we give you a platform and you can step into one of these richer leagues that Liam's already mentioned. I get the sense that Matt O'Reilly looks happy. I mean, you just have to look at that celebration after Kuhn scored his goal. He looks like a happy camper at Celtic. He's not agitating for a move, a wee bit like what Idah is on the other side. Lawrence, if they don't match your valuation, keep him and go into the at least 8 Champions League games and see what we can do. Strengthen it, though. Are we waiting to sell our best asset before we actually spend some money? Because if so, I think we're getting treated like mugs, if that's the case. If we sell O'Reilly and there's a flurry of signings following it, then I'll not be too happy with that.
Well, listen, Peter Law was on record saying the last transfer window, the money's in the bank and he realises it's a mistake. It needs to be reinvested in the team. December was a hard time to spend money. Looks like the summer transfer window is a hard time to spend money too. So the inactivity has been frightening. Positions we've known they'd strengthen our competition for at least a season, maybe 2 seasons. We've been looking at centre halves and left back. How close are we to actually signing them? I know they're speaking about the boy at Wolves and Owen Beck. Left back, centre half. I don't know where we are there. Then again, Liam Scales, another goal, continues to confound his cricket. So, I think he surpassed all our expectations last season and long may continue to do it. I don't think it should be an excuse for us not investing in that area of the team. Matt O'Reilly, I'd build the team around him. And the one thing you touched on, I don't think Matt's throwing his toys out the pram. It doesn't come across as that type of individual. I'd build a team around him. And 8 good Champions League games. He's worth 30 million now. What would he be worth after 8 good Champions League performances?
The big thing I keep hearing, Lawrence, is it doesn't matter how much we get for him, it's going to sit in the bank. I've had a look at the last couple of £25 million deals that we've done, Liam. The first one being, of course, Kieran Tierney. Now, the £25 million we got for Tierney, let's have a look at how we spent it. So in that same transfer window and moving into the winter, here's the players that we purchased. First off, Christopher Jullien. I don't think any of us would disagree. He was an excellent signing. He did really well for Celtic. £7 million we shelled out on Christopher Jullien. Luke O'Connell, remember him? 350 grand. I still think Colin Watt is due me 20 quid because I said he would never kick a ball in Celtic's first team. Ball and goalie. The less said about him, the better. £3 million. Ilhanid, decent enough right back. 1.6 million. We then had players including, I'm not going to count the loans, even though there might have been some fees in there for the likes of Forster, Bauer and El Yunusi. Greg Taylor, 2.2. Frimpong and O'Connor, combined fees of about 500 grand. Klamala, 3.5 million. Sorrow, 2 million. So if you have a few loan fees in amongst that, Liam, you're upwards of 21 million quid. Was it money well spent? How many of they guys played 50 or more games for the football club? Not many. And my point is, you fast forward to the Jota sale. How did we spend the money? 830 grand on Iwata, 2.5 on Home, 1.5 on Tilio. Yang cost 2.1. Kwon was $1 million, 4.3 on Novroshki. Lagerberg was 3 million, Palmer 3.5. I think it was about £2 million to get Nat Phillips up to the club for 6 months, 2.8 for Nicholas Kuhn. Was that money well spent? So there is also a cautionary tale there. 25 million quid. What does it get you versus what do you lose, Liam? I think that's the point I'm making. What we lose if Matt O'Reilly walks out this door is huge, massive. We can't replace it.
Yeah. If it's a direct choice now, I still hope we're going to sign more players regardless, because I reckon we still need at least 2 or 3 additions, regardless of the result of the weekend. And regardless of how utterly mince our opposition look. But the problem is that not only are we spending that money by spreading it out over several players, you're diluting the quality, right? But also, the fact is that we tend to spend the money after we've sold the asset. So players go for, say, 25 million quid. If we go to I don't know, a Brighton or a Nottingham Forest, a lower Premier League team, and say, give us one of your good players. Well, okay, we know you've got 25 million quid, so that 8 million quid player is now a 15 million pound player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's the problem. If we are going to sell Matt O'Reilly, and again, I hope we don't, but I think at boardroom level, that decision's probably already been made one way or the other. And if we are, we should have the replacement in. We should have had the replacement in 6 weeks ago. Ideally, sign a good 10, 12 million pound player, knowing you're going to get 20 plus million for Matt O'Reilly. And that way the fans are happy. It softens the blow of losing arguably our best player. And it also means that you are not paying too much for, I'm sick and tired of clubs outside of England having to pay this English player tax for excessive fees for, I think, mediocre players, of which you could get far better quality in the European leagues.
Yeah. The big thing is it's one of these situations that we are almost conditioned into believing certain things like we must sell. And the only time I think there's a must sell scenario, Lawrence, is if the player is agitating. Obviously, we can see that at the moment with Adam Idah trying to get a move up to Celtic. I'm quite happy about him agitating for that move. But once a player, to use a quote, and I'm probably misquoting him, JP said, if a player's head leaves the building, these boots can follow. I totally get that. We're not seeing that from Matt, and I don't think we will see it from Matt O'Reilly. And I don't want to dedicate an entire episode into speaking about selling our best player, but we're getting filtered the kind of news stories like everybody else. The club are obviously prepared to sell him. Now, in terms of a transfer fee, you look at some of the clubs that are interested and you look at some of the fees that they may have paid in the past. They have spent big money. They know, I'm just looking at the so-called top 10 transfer fees that they've paid, and they have paid upwards of 25 million quid on a number of occasions. Brighton, I'm talking about. You then look at Atalanta, and obviously Serie A, Europa League winners. And, some people might say, why would you go there? Well, I think he does fancy playing in a league outside of Britain, Lawrence. When you look at some of the interest from the Spanish clubs in January, turned his head, he's admitted as much. And someone also in there is saying, sell him and bring back Jota. My point is, keep them both and do something tangible in Europe, because we sold Jota for 25 million and we spraffed the money, Lawrence. We didn't do anything with it. I mean, we're still trying to scratch about to see if we can salvage one of the signings that I've listed.
So I think we are a selling club. I don't think there's any doubt, but only when we don't qualify for the Champions League. We've now got 8 games. We've got that income guaranteed. So we don't need the income this season for selling Matt Riley. And for me, you should be building a team about him. It's 8 games in the Champions League. You don't want to go there and get embarrassed. You want to try and achieve something. We should be looking at adding just now. Hopefully we are, rather than selling. Tell me you went in a panic when Kyogo went down injured. A sole striker. Went down injured opening day of the season.
Mm-hmm.
We've got money to replace him.
Who'd have started, Lawrence? Who'd have started in his place?
Well, Maida's injured just now.
Mm-hmm.
Boris is covering the left because of that. So, are you looking at Mikey Johnson?
Say the words. Say the words. Yes.
Mikey Johnson. but that's where it's going, isn't it? You're looking, well, wait a minute. We've got James Forrest covering the left because the wingers we brought in previously, they're not up to scratch. They're not at the standard yet. I'm not too sure they'll get there. We've got loads in the bank. We've guaranteed 8 Champions League games.
Yep.
With an apology for the chairman over the last transfer window, but how difficult it was to spend money, but he realises it's no good in the bank. We're now almost a quarter of the way into August, and we seem to have problems spending money again.
Is it difficult? I'm going to throw this one to you.
Speak to my missus, mate. She has no problem spending money.
It seems as though, that again, it's this conditioning process where people start to look at all the excuses, reasons for not actually strengthening the squad. Now, the one that I think is legitimate is the fact that Brendan Rodgers has got an aspiration for the type of player, and he keeps talking about this word quality, the type of player he wants to bring to the football club. The structure that we have in terms, or non-structure, in terms of recruitment, are not coming up with the right names. That for me is going to slow down the process, and that's something we need to sort out. And that's a wider issue of the structural setup at Celtic when it comes to recruitment. Some people believe that we should have a director of football, Liam. We certainly should have a head of recruitment at this moment in time. It would appear that our head of scouting has, taken on that role to work alongside Brendan Rodgers. But it's all about amateur hour, isn't it, when it comes to the way that we're trying to identify players? It can't always be down to the contact book of Brendan Rodgers. And I think the concerns were raised again last week when Kasper Schmeichel was asked the question. Brilliant question, straight off the bat from Tino at the Celtic Exchange. And Kasper Schmeichel was honest. And he said, it was 3 or 4 days after we got bounced out of the Euros, which means that 4.5 months down the line, having been told by Joe Hart he was retiring, we still hadn't had a proper replacement lined up for him, Liam. That rings real, concern for me. And it means that we're not being negative here, because we're joining the dots up as information comes in.
Yeah, the other aspect of it that I'm really concerned about is the players that we do sign. It seems that we don't have a clear idea of what we think a player's worth, what we're willing to pay before we go in and sign them. You know, if we had a clear idea, like this is what we're willing to pay for Bernardo, that should have been a done deal. Like, you know, as soon as last season ended, there should never have been any doubt about that. Adam does another one. We should have had a clear valuation of what we think he's worth, offered that, and if Norwich don't want it, we look elsewhere. There's too much wasting time back and forth. You know, you go back as far as like the John McGinn fiasco. For the sake of what, an extra 600 grand, we could have had a player who's now worth 30, 40 million.
Easy.
That's what happens when you go into transfer negotiations without a clear idea of your outcomes. We need to be more professional about this, just generally.
Absolutely.
And I have no confidence in the current board to do that, unfortunately.
But there's so many different things. You talked to me from Japan about your concerns being a fan abroad kind of thing, and I also get that when I'm talking to Sean in Australia, Ian in New Zealand, and our newest recruit, of course, Ryan in the States, about how the club can do so many different things better, Liam. But we're talking about, you know, the fan experience, be that media engagement. This is way up the ladder. This is the recruitment of a club who have dominated Scottish football now for a generation, and we are trying to then make progress in Europe. And it's not just the fans talking about it, Lawrence, because Brendan Rodgers has spoken about it since he got in the door. And in order to make an impression in Europe, you've got to really box clever in the transfer market. We're not doing it.
Yeah, he spoke about the lack of quality. I think we'd all agree with him. Certain positions, we don't have the quality we'd like to see there in the Celtic first team. Certainly not there. While we're enjoying such a period of dominance, we should be able to get people to come and join us with an attractive proposition. But the negotiating style that Liam touched on, you remember the Eddie Howe fiasco? It was much like that.
Yeah.
That was dragged out way too long. Worked out in the end, we got Ange, but, you know, it's that style, isn't it? Dragging it out.
There's an element of luck there, Lawrence, wasn't there? There was an element of fortune there, wasn't there?
Yeah, but and also remember Chalky was through the studio and he was saying, well, look, he's a City Group manager. He's going to be one of the best. Be the best in that area. It's not a high risk one. So
Chalky told us that day, Lawrence, I remember it well. It was a kind of summer afternoon, and Brian McClare came in, and I love him. I think his sense of humour is unbelievable, right up my street. But he told us on that day that this guy within 3 years will be in the English Premiership. He spoke about it. And at that time, you and I, we knew as much as anybody else about Ange in terms of what you had at your disposal research-wise, but Brian McClare knew quite a bit about him. And he knew that there was going to be this progress on an individual basis. I think there's a ruthlessness to a guy like that. I think we need to be more ruthless as a football club. I'm talking about Ange, not Chalky. Chalky's the least ruthless person I've ever met. I think Celtic need to get ruthless. And I think we need to get ruthless with our standing within the Scottish game. And what I mean by that is we seem to just allow things to happen, be that, a club who goes out of business and then the myth of it being the same club and, claiming the same trophies, we just go along with it, because maybe we think that's good for the brand and it's not. Absolutely isn't. And then with the issues with refereeing, the issues with regards to a club being allowed to use Hampden for how much, nobody knows. Why don't we know? Because I seem to remember, Lawrence, back in 1994, it was a different scenario in that it was planned, but everybody knew how much Celtic were being charged for rent. Everybody. How come that transparency doesn't exist when it's Rangers?
Record fine for poaching Tommy Burns as well then.
Yeah.
It's the only person that really spoke out for the club was Lemmy when he spoke about the old club going down and the amount of fine he got and the amount of offences that related to. And it felt like a manager, where were the board? Where was the CEO? Where was the chairman to speak out about this?
Mm-hmm.
But have we had one that would speak out since John Reid moved on? Probably not. Look at football at the weekend. 2 controversial penalty decisions. One's
we'll get to that. We'll get to that, Lawrence. That's why you're on.
You know what I mean? But it's stick on penalty for Hearts. And then Kyogo, great first touch to knock it by the keeper. Looks at going to get it. The keeper wipes him out.
What you're talking about, though, Lawrence, right? You said it took the manager to speak up. I'm going to pick up on that point because I think that's relevant to what we're talking about here. Liam, what are the club's aspirations in Europe? And how do you know that that's the aspirations of the club in Europe? And what you would need to do to answer that question is go back on comments and statements made by the club, and you won't be able to tell us. And you'll need to then reference what Brendan Rodgers, the manager, has told us. So it always seems to be down to the manager rather than having a strong CEO, Michael Nicholson, who barely speaks, right? Actually engaging with the fans. We don't know what the aspirations are of the club, but they're just happy to be at the party, Liam, and then get all the dough, stick that in the bank for a rainy day, and the rainy day might be the following season because we have to play qualifiers.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it speaks, it ties into what I said a minute ago about the transfer policy. Is like there's a distinct lack of leadership, lack of forward planning, and there is no outcome. There's no preconceived outcome. You know, most fans, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but from what I've heard, most fans think that we should be looking to get to a position where we can have a playoff for one of the last 16 places in the Champions League. We should be finishing in that second tranche outside the top 8, but still high enough up to get into, you know, the equivalent of finishing second or third in a group stage previously. And you know, that is what I think the fans expect. The board, I think, are like, oh, we've made the Champions League again. Great, you know, get the disco lights on, and we'll just have, you know, 8 games. Who cares if we get pumped in all of them as long as we still win the league and beat Rangers? That's the board's mentality. Keep churning out strips, keep churning out various unnecessary merchandise, regardless of the financial burden being placed on working class supporters, and continue to just manage mediocrity because that's all we need. And the combination of us giving Kilmarnock a scalping at the weekend, and I sat and watched that Rangers Hearts game, and neither of them are going to be a threat to us this year. That's just justification for the board to continue what they're doing in their eyes. They think we're going to win the league at a canter anyway, so why bother spending any more money? And Europe is beyond this because you have to go into funny money to compete there. Not necessarily. Right. You look at teams like Ajax, you look at teams like, you know, a bit of an obscure example, Sheriff Tiraspol beat Real Madrid a couple of years ago. You know, you can, if you have a good plan, if you have players who are determined, if you have a good unit, you can pull off results in the Champions League. We never seem to do that, and it's because I think at boardroom level, too many of us are happy just to be there. It's a bit like Scotland whenever they get to a major tournament.
I know. I don't like that attitude. I can only speak personally. It's not my attitude. I think my love of Celtic from a young age was based on stories and songs about European endeavours. And you speak to your family members about going to some of these games, and then you jump in a bus from Blair Hall in Fife, and the guy driving the bus drove to Milan in 1970 and still talks about it all these years later and passing down the baton. What am I going to pass down? Stephen Craig and I spoke on This Is Acsom about a Lisbon in our lifetime. Okay, we might not win the European Cup, but give us something, because 21 years ago we got to a UEFA Cup final. And this is the thing as well, and it all ties into selling your best players. I mean, that's why we're talking about European aspirations, and we're at the beginning of a new season. But the biggest issue for me is you sell Matt O'Reilly just now, Lawrence, and because we have this inherent issue when it comes to recruitment, Matt O'Reilly, right now, the version we're looking at, has developed for 2.5 years at Celtic. So if we want to replace him, we know we can't spend 25 to 30 million quid on a replacement. We know we will never do that, right? Whilst we're playing in Scottish football. That's always the caveat. But what you do is you buy someone in 2.5 seasons ago. Matt comes in maybe a season later, who then develops. And I don't think we've got that. I'm not buying that Bernardo is a replacement for O'Reilly. They're completely different players. They are completely different players. I think offensively is where the best attributes are with Matt O'Reilly. Look, we know what Paulo Bernardo can do, but I don't think that he's ever going to be involved in 37 goal contributions in one campaign. I don't think he's that type of player. So I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't accept that as an excuse either, Lawrence.
I don't think listen, saw what he could do last season, and we went back to his club and said, listen, he's not worth 6 million. You know, that's how impressed we were. We'd like him to join, but he's not going to in any way, shape, or form replace O'Reilly's numbers. And if that's your plan, you're down again on where you were last season.
Mm-hmm.
We had both last season, so we're only going to have one. It's crazy. You touched on kind of aspirations in Europe. Listen, the board, you'd imagine they do have some, and they've got a plan, because it'd just be ridiculous otherwise. But see, when that plan doesn't work season on season, when did he change it? When did he go, actually, see what we're doing in Europe? We're getting kind of humiliated here. Mm-hmm. You'll remember before Martin come back, and then he built us into a fortress. You'll remember Oliver Kahn celebrating a draw at Celtic Park. We just
Lawrence, I grew up.
Park, you know what I mean?
Grew up never getting out the second round in Europe. That was my upbringing. I never got through the second round, you know, and you play a round against Borussia Dortmund, or you play Honved, or Germinal Ekeren, or Partizan Belgrade, and you get no further. Neuchâtel, oh please, and you get no further. Remember who the manager was for Neuchâtel, by the way?
Oh, I can't remember their manager. Hassan was about to score the goals for them, wasn't it?
It was Roy Hodgson. Roy Hodgson was the manager. Hodgson. Yeah. No, you're right. That was my European upbringing, but it all changed when Martin O'Neill came to the football club. You're spot on. But then again, he did, and we've spoken to him a couple of times. We've had the pleasure of doing that and being in his company once. He wasn't able to push on, because we did have the Seville run, but we also had a couple of really good campaigns where on another season we would have qualified out of very tough groups.
Look at it. I mean, Gordon Strachan, I don't think he gets enough credit. You know, I think he had to third the wage bill, and he still gets 2 last 16s. You know, he was still building on what O'Neill had left him, but from there, the odd result under Lenny, is that it? You know, and it's just ridiculous. If, you know, we're winning in Scotland comfortably, and we don't seem to really have any plan for Europe, what we're going to do, how we're going to go further. And it's certainly not be keeping loads of money in the bank.
No. Big shout out to Lenny, because you say Strachan deserves credit, and he does, but Lenny got us to the last 16, the last manager to do so. Now, I'm going to touch on that one just now, Liam, because insofar as what have we done since would be the question, right? So you'll remember, everybody will, forevermore, beating Barcelona 2-1, Wanyama and Tony Watt. Phenomenal night. It's part of the Celtic folklore. What did we do next? Well, we got into the last 16, and Juventus beat us, and they beat us well. So instead of strengthening at that stage, we weakened the squad, because we sold Wanyama, Hooper, Kelvin Wilson, Joe Ledley. 4 guys who were first picks. And then, you know, we did bring in some players who were successes, but it wasn't a like for like. And again, you've got to go through that process of them kind of stepping up to that mark. So we did bring in Stefan Johansson, who was a player I liked. We brought in Van Dijk. He went on to do great things. But why not bring those 2 players in to complement what you've already got, Liam, and to strengthen what you've already got? You know, because when Joe Ledley left, what was he, 26, 27 years of age? He went on to play 3.5 years in the Premiership. He went on to be part of that brilliant Wales side that got into the semis of the Euros. He wasn't a busted flush when we took £500,000 for him. So this is my point. Strengthen rather than sell your best assets, and then you might be able to build on it. Because if you don't, you then get another decade, because when was that? 2012, 2013, 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago, another decade or so of inactivity at that level.
I mean, it's a recurring pattern. You know, the Seville season, we thought, right, this is it. It's established now. Celtic are a club that can compete at European level. We've went toe to toe with the very best, beat a very good Liverpool team along the way. You know, beat several other decent teams to get there. And then, you know, fast forward again, knocked out Barcelona a year or 2 after that. Beat Barcelona again in 2012. And every few years there's this feeling like, oh, we're going somewhere. But the last time we felt that was when we beat Barcelona, then beat Spartak Moscow a few weeks later. And that was 12 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's getting further away, and there's no sign of those days coming back anytime soon, unfortunately, because, as I've said before, the board are far too comfy. They get plenty of money, every season from us because they know we're going to buy season tickets regardless. They know they can release as many strips as they want and we'll buy them because we're a bunch of loyal but gullible fans.
Fanatics. Yep.
And they also know that because of the weakness of the league, vast investment isn't necessary to win the league. They know that. And as I said at the weekend, watching Rangers and Hearts just kind of re-emphasise that point. If that's the best that Scottish football has to offer to challenge us, we're going to win this league by 20 points plus.
My big thing, Liam, we'll touch on the weekend because we've obviously got stuck right into the Matt O'Reilly gossip, and it's more than gossip because the club have been confirmed to be speaking to clubs in relation to his departure. We're talking about aspirations, but we'll also talk about the game, the opening weekend of Scottish football, and we'll bring in some comments along the way as well. But in relation to that game, after it, I was looking at it, and I think we could have won 5 or 6 now. But I got the sense, and it might actually come to fruition by the end of the season, we could beat every team in the league 4-0. We're capable of doing it. I'm not saying we will do it because I know how a season goes. I know how you get to that. Normally, at some stage, you go through a patch where things aren't really flowing as well, normally before Christmas. But we are capable of doing that, Liam, because as you said before, I think certain clubs are standing still or even regressing. I look at Hibs. Listen, famous last words, we're playing them this weekend at Easter Road. Could be a tricky fixture for us, but I look at their incomings, I look at their opening day's result, and I'm thinking, there's an instability about that football club where it's a rinse and repeat kind of situation with the manager and backroom team. They're bringing in new players, doesn't work, try again. I think that's where they are. They're in a cycle at the moment. But yes, I'm looking at it. We've got the manager in place. We've got wads and wads of money in the bank. We've got a Champions League campaign to look forward to. Yet the one bit we're not getting right at the moment, it's the quality coming in the door. Stephen Sloan, welcome to the show, Stephen. Matt should be away this week, and all we've brought in is 2 goalkeepers and a midfielder. I hate coming across negative. Listen, to be honest, Stephen, you've just stated a fact here. It's no negative. But we have 3 weeks left of this window. What is taking so long for new players? I hope we're not waiting until we sell our best player, Stephen. That's a concern that I have got at the moment. Jungle Lion, proper clubs wouldn't sell their best player unless they had a replacement in. And if we had a replacement in, Jungle Lion at that quality, we probably should have signed them a couple of years ago and developed him. Mr. C, buzzing for my daily dose of the exact same words for every day of the last 10 weeks. Comment on the sparsity of matters to discuss, not the channel. Well, thanks for... is it the same Mr. C that used to be the lead singer of the Shaman? Can you remember them? Ease are good, all that kind of stuff. They were a decent band. Boss Drum. Barry O'Sullivan, O'Reilly is a class player, but we can win the league without him. Are you a member of the Celtic board, Barry? Because that I think is their thinking.
No, well,
I'll tell you, we won't win the league with, and we won't win 4-0 every game if we only have one striker.
No, I know.
I mean, it's ridiculous. We kick off a season with one striker.
It is ridiculous. I totally agree with you. The board will take the money and bank it. We can only hope Brendan gets the quality in he needs. However, hope is not a strategy. Barry, I was only joking about the board. I know that could be deemed as an insult. And Joe Hamilton, Matt is smart and he loves Celtic. If he wants to leave, then it has to be the 30 million. And that should be enough to bring Jota back. What's he up to these days? I'm going to bring in a wee point that Danielle made as well, and one from Gary Doonan before we move on. Danielle says the following: is Billy Gilmour still at Brighton? Are you throwing a cat amongst the pigeons, Daniel? I'd take him plus 25 million quid. I don't think his mother would be that happy, Lawrence. She doesn't even like him wearing green on his jersey.
I think be a decent signing for us, I think. I wouldn't really care what his mum would think. If he's willing to come and Brendan thinks he's a quality player he's looking for, absolutely bring him in.
I wouldn't have an issue with it. I would not have an issue with bringing a player like Billy Gilmour to Celtic. I would have no issue with it. Liam?
I don't care if he's a 5-headed Martian. If he's a good footballer, get him in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's always been my opinion.
I totally agree. The underwater cabbage salesman definitely got the profile name of the year award last season. You aren't getting 30 million for Matt O'Reilly. Delusions, baseless theories. What are we basing it on? Right. He's our top player. I don't think there's much doubt about that. And when we sell our top player, what do we get for him? Right. So 5 years ago, we got 25 million quid for Kieran Tierney. And 1 year ago, we got 25 million pound for Jota. Surely when you're looking at his age profile, Lawrence, The fact that, in terms of the international recognition that he's recently got, and hopefully he'll get more of that now that they've changed their gaffer, who somehow didn't think he was good enough for the Euros. I think he will progress. He's got the Champions League campaign under his belt. Is he worth more than what Tierney or Jota was to the team? Let's say he's our best asset, so he was worth as much as. But, we sold Tierney 5 years ago for the same amount. I think he is worth 30 million quid. What? I mean, we can't replace him, Lawrence. We can't replace him.
The last bid is rumoured to be 25 million in add-ons. And apparently
Is that from Brighton?
No. Yeah,
that
so apparently Celtic have said no. So
right.
We're looking for more than 25. I would say 30 million for his numbers. His numbers were frightening last season. You see, the age he's at just now, his best years are ahead of him. So, yeah. If we're going to sell him, you've got to be looking to maximise that. And
then they sell on, Lawrence. If a team, let's say Atalanta play ball, and they sell him in 2.5 seasons, they're going to make a massive amount on a player like Matt O'Reilly.
Yeah, they could double the money on him easily down there. That's the thing, goes down in performance work well in the EPL. 60 million probably wouldn't buy him then. But saying that, stay here, 8 good Champions League games. Say that, so look, people aren't matching the value. But you've got 8 Champions League games here. Let's talk about getting you in a new contract. We'll put in a buyout clause at whatever. And because it does appear ridiculously difficult for us to get quality in the door. And if you have got probably getting quality coming in, you probably don't want your quality to leave.
No, absolutely not.
That's what it comes down to, isn't it? We shouldn't be thinking about selling him. We concentrate on getting another striker. If Kyogo went down and you're like, geez, this is all we need an open day of the season. No strikers. Greg Taylor's not signed his new contract yet. He's been in competition at left back for about 3-4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Could do with a centre half. James Wattis is covering at left wing for me. We could do with a bit more quality on the wing. But listen, I thought Kuhn was good at the weekend. It looks much better for the pre-season than he did last season. But selling O'Reilly for me would be crazy. The board wanted to show some ambition. Hopefully, Brendan, I know he stood up to the board before on players moving on. Hopefully, Brendan will stand up to himself. I'm not interested in selling him while we're still in the Champions League.
And whilst I don't have the quality. Yeah, and whilst I don't have the quality in the door. Yeah. Jerry agrees with you. Board have no ambition. J.I. love the £30 million. Close the door on offers under. Yeah, just tell them if you're not prepared to come in at that price, then don't waste their time. Mark, Anthony Smith, £30 million might be his value, but what is he worth to our team? A lot more. Let's talk about some of the early season performances then, Liam. Cracking game. Brilliant opening day to the season, of course. Nice and positive. Flag day. Debut boy, Kasper Schmeichel. Start off with him. How did you think he bedded in to the world of a Celtic goalkeeper?
I mean, as good as a guy who hardly touched the ball can. I mean, he was didn't put a foot wrong, but hardly had to do anything, and that just speaks to the way the game went. No, he looks, good commanding presence. He's doing a lot of marshalling of the defence, the way Joe Hart did.
Don't talk about a goalie and use the word marshal, please, because I just got a flashback there, Liam.
What, to Barcelona?
To Big Holmesy. No, I'm talking about the earlier Marshall.
Oh, jeez,
Big Gogs.
I thought flashback to Rugby Park, mate.
Fun fact, I've got Gordon Marshall's Motherwell strip from the last game he ever played before he retired.
Did you?
I got it as a present from a friend of a friend.
what I would implore anybody to do is get onto the Acsom YouTube channel. We started to review the old Celtic VHS videos, of which I think there are 70. They're all up there. They're all there. We've got the full collection. And we started doing reviews. I started off with the Celtic collection. And on one of them, right, you've got the goalie. And one of his side hustles was he would cut the hair of Celtic players and staff. And it's actually got him, honestly, you couldn't make this up. The presenter of these Celtic collection videos was Paul Cooney, who's still on Go Radio, isn't he? And he's sitting in the barber's chair getting his hair cut as he's interviewing Big Gogs and he's cutting hair. Oh, how we have moved on from there. Can you imagine Big Casper doing that, Liam? Probably not.
No, probably not.
But you
Especially not
brought
with his
him up.
goalie gloves on.
You brought him up. Big Marsh. Why did you do that?
Ah.
Remember we signed his brother under Joe
Scott.
Vegas? You remember that?
Scott Marshall, yeah.
Yes, yep. And he
Defender.
played in
Arsenal was signed from.
I think, yeah, he was at Arsenal. And that's an interesting one whereby their dad played for Celtic. Gordon Marshall Sr. played in goals for Celtic. And then obviously Gordon and Scott, the two boys, also played. How did we get there, Liam? Why did you do that to me? Casper Schmeichel, the one thing from an afternoon where he didn't have much to do that I was impressed with, Lawrence, is just with the ball at his feet. I think he's so confident. He can play quick passes. He started an attack at the weekend, and it wasn't just a big hopeful hoof. He's very good with the ball at his feet, isn't he?
Yeah, it seems more suited to than Joe was. But listen, it's hard to judge. Command didn't show much intent, and I think we kind of touched on it. They're still focusing on Europe, aren't they? You know, they had their European game, and it was maybe taking a bit out of the players. It's a lot for them to manage, which us having double European games is going to be similar effect on us, especially if we don't bring quality in. But yeah, Casper looked good, but didn't really have a lot to do. I mean, I think I saw a stat that Liam Scales had more passes than the entire Kilmarnock team put together.
I saw that.
You know, it's just Scales' his numbers brilliant in the game. You know, gets a goal. I think everyone would say we'd be looking at bringing in a replacement for him, but every game he's turning up. He's putting in performances. You know, he's confounding his crickets. And listen, good luck to him. But yeah, good performance by Liam. But I told would still see another quality centre half. I don't know if Rocky's savable. He always seems to be injured.
I've got to
him
admit,
and Stephen Welsh. You know, Booper won't cover him.
I know. See, when he went down in the pre-season game, I almost just thought, right, I'm done. This is a Simunovic situation. I think when you look at Nawrocki, he played something like 73 senior games of football when we signed him, and we shell out 4.3 million quid on a guy who hasn't got the games under his belt, Lawrence, right? And you ask yourself, why? Was he late breaking into the first team, or is he just never fit? And going back to Brian McClare, one of the things he always says, biggest asset for Ferguson, Alex Ferguson, was that you were available to play. And if you weren't for any reason, you were no good to him, and he would move you on. And he did that when he came into the football club. There's some brilliant comments coming through, and I'm really keen to bring some of these up. Derek Rourke. Ben Doak is off on loan, it appears, so much for the discussion about talent. Ben Doak is a talent. There is no doubt whatsoever about that. Ben Doak would have played for Scotland at the Euros had it not been for injury. But you brought his name up, Derek. Why don't we bring him in? Would you be up for that, Lawrence?
Oh, definitely. You know, I think he'd improve the team. Yeah, bring him in. I don't know if the board could perhaps swallow.
It's a loan. It's a loan deal.
Yeah, I think perhaps there might be some pride and they wouldn't do it. But yeah, I'd bring him in.
Yeah, I think a loan deal, it's one of the things, Liam, we could help with his development even further. He's a player I was very excited about, mainly speaking to people who worked alongside him. Why not? I don't think going out and loan at Liverpool at his age means that his Liverpool career's finished.
No, I mean, the thing is that if you're at one of the top clubs in England, and I think Liverpool has definitely hit that category, you know, pretty much anywhere else you go is going to be a step down, but it doesn't mean it has to be a permanent step down. I mean, David Beckham played for what, Preston North End?
He did, aye.
You know,
Yeah.
And he did all right after that. You know, Jack Grealish, did he not play for, was it Derby County?
Notts County.
Notts County, sorry. Aye. You know, plenty of players who went on to be absolute superstars in the English Premier League have had to go out on loan to lesser clubs at some point. So I definitely don't think it's the end for Ben Doak, and I think we all agree that he's got the talent. I just wish Celtic could have kept a hold of him and he at least got a few quid for him. So,
I know. It's one of the players we're going to be talking about him for years to come, I think. Derek, you were also... This shows you the beauty of Acsom. We could be talking about Ben Doak 1 minute and then being Johannes Edvaldson's postman the next. Is there a story in that? Why just a week, Derek? Did he have a big, massive dug? I don't know. Tell us more. Stephen Donnelly. They only see pound signs. That's all they are interested in. We will get the £25 million and spend 8 on 5 projects. That's what they done with Jota money. Yeah, we opened it up, Stephen, with what we did with the money we brought in for Tierney. What did we do with the money we brought in for Jota? We didn't use it that well, did we? Probably Jota even worse so. Now, Andy Lee comes in to say, great performance by every Celtic player. Big Scales was outstanding. Lawrence has already given him a shout out. Hatate and Kyogo, excellent. To be a wee bit negative, the officiating was shocking. I don't think it's negative, Andy. You're just stating facts. I'm going to speak about the 2 Japanese players you mentioned. But before I do that, your maw is on to say Derek Ferguson is a top bloke, played in his boys' team and done coaching badges with him. He wouldn't stop Lewis going to Celtic. No chance. Right. Interesting you say that. I've said this before, it's not name dropping or whatever, but if I meet anybody in football, I try to be a sponge and get information from them. And I did speak to Derek Ferguson last year, and this was before Lewis's injury, and he was flying in Italy. And I asked him if there had been an issue with Celtic being interested. He said, absolutely no chance. Celtic didn't make an offer for the boy, but if they had done, there would have been no issue within the family. And I would, again, go back to the Gilmore comments, I wouldn't have had an issue with us signing him. I've been a big fan of Lewis Ferguson's for a while. Right, Kyogo's getting loads of mentions, Liam, as is Hatate. I love them both as players. I think both of them had less than vintage seasons last year. Kyogo better than Hatate, but we've seen glimpses of what Hatate can offer in this Brendan Rodgers side. I was very interested with the Brendan Rodgers comments talking about his difficulties last season, and I thought it was great that he didn't speak about them at the time. He's talking about them now that he's refound his form.
Aye, I mean, it's very, very good man management to say, look, you know, I recognise that the player had an issue last season. The player recognised he had an issue, and he's dealt with it. And now we're all moving forward together, and that's how it should be. Excellent management from Brendan Rodgers, but also I think great professionalism from Hatate, because clearly he's been told he has to change his role. And he's worked on it, and we're starting to see that now. You know, I made a prediction on Celtic Down Under the other day that I think who would be our most improved player this season. I think based purely on last season, it's going to be Rio Hatate. He's going to be a Player of the Year contender this year, I think.
Yeah.
And Kyogo just looks so much happier, having, again, adapted to a different role in the team. He's dropping a bit deeper, feeding the ball out to the wingers, and then making his runs forward that we know he's really good at. On another day, he could have had a hat trick at the weekend. The chances he was getting in for, their keeper made some good saves. There was the offside that was offside, I think. There's also the penalty incident, but Kyogo had a great game. It's been a while since I've seen a striker have such a good game without actually scoring a goal.
I know, he was outstanding, wasn't he? I mean,
yeah.
The moment where he's turned that defender. I think the saying is he sent him for a hot dog, right? And then he's dinked it over the goalie. I mean, it would have been contender for goal of the season already, Lawrence. It was outstanding. The pass to Kuhn, let's not forget the assist to Kuhn. Unbelievable. Like Liam says, he came deep. He played that ball to Kuhn, and had Kuhn required to distribute it back to him, Kyogo had found the space. But obviously, he takes the shot and he scores the goal. I thought Kyogo, that was the best performance for a long time I've seen from him.
Yeah, it's cracking. Liam says it looked really happy. People said that there's not that much difference between Ange and Brendan's style. We're getting that last season. It's not that, but he was involved in so many class moves. And you saw what the opposition done. They were taking him out.
Yeah.
Which we've got to expect. They've got to compete some way. It's a worry when we've got one striker, mate. What kick off the season with one striker?
That is worrying you. You keep going back to this. That is worrying you big time.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
We've got Mickey Johnston though, Lawrence.
We're supposed to get Idah, and you're going, we should be looking at having 3 strikers, surely.
Totally. Absolutely.
That's what Brendan's come out and said. He was going to give the third best to Rocco Vata. Surely that plan and strategy of development players hasn't changed. So, right, we know we're having problems getting Idah in, but where's this other boy then that's going to take the third?
Is it internal? Is it internal, Lawrence? Is it a loan? Is it Ben Doak coming in on loan? Is he going to be the third striker? Would he be happy to sit on a bench?
I doubt it, mate. But for us, being linked to I think it was a young South American striker we're linked with. Well, we need to get guys in the door. They need to get the pre-season blood. They should have had pre-season with the team. We need them up to speed for the Champions League. If Keeper takes Kyogo out, if he didn't get up, we'd be facing it. Say he was out for 2 weeks. 2 weeks without a striker beginning of the season.
You brought up the penalty, Lawrence. Let's talk about it. Liam's already said that part of Kyogo's appendage was offside. We know that can be a problem with the old pole vaulting as well. Liam, have you seen that action? Yeah, unfortunately, Kyogo might have been.
As Spider-Man said, it's my gift, it's my curse,
Absolutely. But let's talk about the penalty because, I thought it was tight. I didn't see a great view of the offside, actually, until after the event. And even then, the lines weren't great. But the penalty for me was as clear as day, Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was, I was hearing after the game. I love getting insight from people who have played the game. But if your insight is where else is a goalie going to go? And you think, wow, once a goalkeeper has committed himself into a space and done so in such a way that he's going to foul a player, where else is he going to go? That's called a foul, Chris. Talk about Chris Boyd here. That was a penalty all day long, Lawrence, wasn't it?
Yeah, the sticker, what a first touch by Kyogo, though. Absolute class.
Yep.
He's nicked by the keeper. And he's just wiped him out. Let's be honest. He's late. He's wiped him out. What the VAR official's looking at? What's the ref looking at? What's the assistant ref looking at? The keeper's wiped him out. It's pretty clear. It's a stick-on penalty. Well, goal difference might not come into it at the end of the season. We hope not. But, that could have been another goal from the penalty. Keeper's off the park. It's just a ridiculous decision. Yeah, I don't think there's any defending it. I've not heard what Willie Collum's got to say about it under his new regime of openness.
But Lawrence, they were being praised. They were being praised over the weekend. I mean, I watched that penalty and it was 100% a penalty. They were being praised for making a decision quickly, but they made the wrong decision, Liam. So how can you praise the regime where we're still getting the big decisions wrong?
The thing that gets me with that decision, right now, let's just for a minute, give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say Kyogo was offside, right? Just let's just go with that, okay? And that's why the penalty wasn't given. Even so, the referee should be at least giving out a yellow card to the goalkeeper for that challenge because it's dangerous play. It's reckless, it's dangerous, and it could have hurt Kyogo. And I know people are going to say, I can already see it's going to come in the comments, well, the rules are it's null and void if someone's offside in the build-up. I think, personally, that is total BS and it needs to change because dangerous play is dangerous play, regardless of whether the ball's active or not. At the end of the day, if I'm warming up as a substitute and I stuck at one of the other subs, I'm going to get a red card for it. Mm-hmm. The fact that I'm not on the pitch at the time is irrelevant. So a dangerous tackle is a dangerous tackle, regardless of whether the move was active or not.
The big thing about that, Liam, is if somebody gets a serious injury as a result of a tackle or a foul that is non-punishable. I think there would be an issue there. James Devine, we're still talking about Matt O'Reilly. 30 million quid should be a minimum for him, says James.
Yep.
We've got John Keenan coming in. I would call Norwich's bluff. I've got a lot of comments coming through similar to John's here, so I want to ask you guys this question. I would call Norwich's bluff and walk away from the deal. Do they want an unhappy player on their books? A lot of people are saying move on. A lot of people are name-checking a player that I know you like, Miovski. Lawrence watched Miovski again last night, a really good player who would do well for us. Time to move on from Idah. At what point is it time to move on? Because I'm still quite comfortable at the moment, Lawrence. I wouldn't be if it was my team that someone was down in tools at, but I'm quite comfortable that we're going to get Idah. I still think to myself, we're going to get him. We were able to rattle Benfica from 6 million down to 3.5. We're probably trying to do the same with Norwich from, I don't know what lofty figure they have in their minds. I still think we're going to get him. If anything, his behaviour and attitude might turn other teams off.
Yeah, listen, I think the deal will be done. I think, go back to what Liam touched on earlier, we should have made a take it or leave it and walked away earlier. we shouldn't have been getting to the start of the season with one striker. We kind of knew when the season was kicking off. We had to get provided with a fixture list. So for us to get to the stage where we're still haggling over however many quid it is for Idah, so said, look, we need you in a week before kick-off. This is going to be take it or leave it to Norwich. Because that new manager, he'll be trying to get the price up because he knows he'll get that to spend on the players that he wants to bring in. Sometimes you can't show on a deal in if it's just not going to work. We should have walked away and had the next guy in, right? Whether it's Majowski or whoever else is next on the list, we should have moved on.
Would we be prepared to do a deal with Aberdeen, though? Because Majowski could have been an option in January, and we weren't willing to pay the money by all accounts, Lawrence. So there needs to come a point where we actually behave like a big club when it comes to transfers.
Listen, if we're going to say you're undervaluing the Scottish League and Matt Rowley's worth 30 million, you can get a goal scorer with Majowski and us say, actually, it's only Aberdeen. He's worth 3. It kind of cuts both ways. If you're going to sell your players for more, other teams in the league will expect to sell their players for more. But whether it's Majowski or somebody else, we should have moved on. We should have had a number 1 and number 2 striker in for the start of the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about yourself, Liam? At what point does that move become sour for you?
Well, I tell you, if I was in charge of Celtic's transfers, which they're probably grateful I'm not, but this is what I would do right now. Go out and sign Majowski. Give Aberdeen whatever they want for him, within reason. I think he is £5 or £6 million player. I don't think that's unreasonable. And then just say, right, we're ending our interest in Idah. Deadline day, go back in and offer them the same money, take it or leave it. And Norwich, by that point, will say, well, we're better to take the money than have a player we can't use for the rest of the season. And we get both, and that's going to get the fans back on side as well.
The mind games of Liam Carrigan. Do you do that in relationships as well, Liam, to get your own way? I like it. Gary Doonan, here we go.
Only when the wife lets me.
3 modern day legends: Bruni, Callum McGregor, and James Forrest. Not always appreciated, and it took 4 years, 3 years, and in James's case, at least 12 years to be really appreciated by some section of our fans. Who's next? Right, that's interesting because I think time plays tricks on you, and people forget that Bruni was. A lot of people were on the fence about Scott Brown for a while at Celtic. Lawrence, he obviously had other personal issues ongoing in the early part of his Celtic career that would affect anybody's performance in any job. But he went on to become this iconic Celtic captain who's right up there when it comes to the list of most decorated. He is currently in joint 4th place with Callum McGregor, having won 22 trophies. Callum McGregor took him a wee while to get going as well. I remember him during the kind of Ronnie Deila era. A lot of fans were writing him off then. And then, of course, James Forrest. People were still writing him off last season. Who's next? That could be taken 2 ways. Who's going to be the next homegrown legend, or who's going to be the next whipping boy? And hopefully we don't have a whipping boy. I know that Scalesy and Taylor get a lot of stick. They never came through the ranks. They seem to get a lot of stick though, don't they?
Yeah, both of them do. And I think it's probably not because of their performances, I think.
A goal and an assist at the weekend from them collectively.
Yeah.
So,
and it's probably because of the aspirations of the quality we have to take us further in Europe. And Greg, everybody's he's not Kieran Tierney, no, but some seasons his numbers were better than Kieran's. So, I really hope Greg signs a new contract. Liam Scales just seems to play out his skin every week, and I think there was a marked improvement on his performance in terms of his passion, his number of passes and completion than we'd seen on last season. He was building from the back more. Brendan's improving him. That's what he's been brought here to do. I think they're easy targets because say, look, we should be able to get better quality in for those positions, or at least have somebody competing with Greg Taylor. Because I don't know who his competition is just now. At Celtic, even looking, we spoke to Wolves, but went back to Liverpool about on Beck. It's a loan. Is it a loan option we buy? Liverpool want to sell.
Is he any better? Serious question.
I don't think he is than Greg Taylor. No, not just now. He's younger and he's maybe got more potential. I don't think he's any better than Greg Taylor.
Yeah,
and I'm not too sure about the boy for Wolves. And we need to start showing some ambition. You want guys that you sign and straight away they're walking into your first team.
There's a balance there. Yeah, you're right. That's the type of player we need right now. You need a first team starter. The thing with Scales is, you look at the players that he's being picked ahead of. There's a whole host of them at the moment in the central defensive area. And you look at the guys that have come in for reasonable money, who he's still here and they're not. Nat Phillips still cost us £2 million to bring him in on loan. Nawrocki cost us 4.3, Lagerbielke 3 million. Yet Scales is going to be outlasting all three of those guys, as well as Kobayashi, as well as possibly even Welsh. Welsh and Ralston gets a hard time as well, to be fair. They're two guys who did come through the ranks. But yes, what's your take on that then, Liam? We don't need a scapegoat, surely, but there always seems to be one.
No, and that's the thing. I think every player at Celtic at the moment is playing to the best of their ability based on the performance of the weekend. And the problem is that in the eyes of a lot of fans, and I tend to agree with them in certain aspects, even if those players are playing at their best, it's still not good enough to do any damage in Europe. Liam Scales, Greg Taylor are both players who have proven last season and at the start of this season that they are definitely good enough to win us the league in Scotland. But are they good enough to make an impact in the Champions League? I've read people say that they think Greg Taylor is too small. He's going to teams in Europe are going to deliberately target him. Don't know how much I agree with that, because you don't necessarily have to be tall to be a good fullback. But there is that is the weakness that most people have identified. And if we are talking about it, the media are talking about it, you better believe our opponents are going to be talking about it come Champions League. So we really need to address those issues. And I think both of those players, there is a future for them at Celtic. They've both done more than enough to prove that they deserve to be part of this squad. Emphasis on squad. They do not necessarily need to be starting players. We should be looking to, I've always said that Carter Vickers +1 is our centre-back pairing. We still haven't found that one that's as good as he is.
And by the way, if your backup is Liam Scales or Greg Taylor or Tony Ralston, I'm happy with that.
Yep.
If that's your backup, Fraser Smith, good to see you, Fraz. Have James McCarthy and Kobayashi not gone yet? Lawrence, you were telling me last week McCarthy's left the building. Is this true?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Was it in the group chat? Yeah, I heard he'd left. Well, the club haven't released anything, so who knows? But I heard he'd cleared out at Lennoxtown and contract mutually consented. But
is that just down to timing? Are they just going to wait? Is it a timing thing? They know it's not a good news story, therefore they're not. And what I mean by that, it's not a good news story to have a player on the books for that length of time on 15 grand a week that hasn't really played football for a long time. To release that just now, you can just imagine the replies on the tweet in relation to sign players.
I think James moving on, it didn't work out for him. He injured against Dundee United. He came on a free. I get he was on big wages, but we didn't pay a transfer fee for him. He was a Celtic fan. Is it a good news story? Well, it's part of something the manager said.
I'm a Celtic fan, mate. I don't get paid 15 grand a week. I'm a Celtic fan. I could have done his job.
Close to it, but you would have run out of Celtic Park as well. But no, look, it's probably good. It's something that Brendan wanted. He wanted to reduce the squad size. So
yes,
from that, I would say it's good news.
Good luck to him. Good luck to James McCarthy.
Absolutely.
I hope he can get a club.
Well, I'm not too sure. I think he'd probably be happy with Celtic being his last club in his CV.
Right.
I don't know for certain, but I don't think he'd be too disappointed if that was his final thing in football was that he was a Celtic player.
I'm pretty sure that would have been his dream. I would have loved to have signed him earlier on in his career. In fact, if we were quick enough, we could have got him from Hamilton, I think, at the time. He's one we don't mention that often. We always go back to McGinn. We always go back to, Fletcher. We could have signed these guys at a point in their career, and we could have seen their progression at Celtic. And McCarthy was one of them. We could have signed him from Hamilton.
James McFadden, you could have had as well.
Yeah.
I think, what was it, 300,000 or something we're fighting over for? I can't remember McFadden.
We could have signed McGinn from St Mirren. It was obvious as a 17-year-old that he had it. What about Kobayashi? We've got the best person on to speak about him, and that's Liam Carrigan, based in Japan, knows a lot about the player. You've been disappointed with the way the moves transpired because you rate him. He's played a few games at left back in the pre-season. It's a matter of time before he moves on as well, I would guess as well. Any news over in Japan about that one?
No news at the moment. But like I said, the J League season finishes in November, so this is not generally a time when a lot of players come into the J League. A lot of European clubs sign Japanese players now with a view to the season starting end of August, beginning of September. But there's not that many players going the other way. So I don't see Kobayashi moving back to Japan before January, if it was going to happen. Because January is mid-season for us, but that's close season for the J League, because it's like the break is from November until end of February, beginning of March. So
Makes sense.
that would be the perfect time for him to move on in terms of getting a fresh start, a new season with a new club in Japan. But I actually thought he looked all right when I saw him pre-season. And I wonder if he could be an auxiliary left back if need be, if Greg Taylor gets injured. Assuming, and I hope to God we do sign another left back, but if we don't, is Kobayashi then going to be the cover at left back?
So if we get an injury to Greg Taylor and an injury to Kyogo, we will be starting with Kobayashi and Mikey Johnston at Easter Road come the weekend. We'll be talking a lot about that game as the week progresses. Thank you everybody for getting involved. 1,000+ strong on the live stream today. I was of course joined from Japan and the Skylark Bar. Great chat, could have gone on for even longer. Give us a subscribe on the YouTube, it's free. Thumbs up. We'll be recording tomorrow an episode of This Is Acsom that will be on the channel on Friday night. And I'm about to announce our next gig, because the one that we've got at the moment sold out. There's a couple of tickets left for some of the Lubo and Mialbi events that we've got coming up. And I will be announcing a new one. So take a look at the socials later on today, as soon as I get that up there. And if you want to come along, they're always good nights, aren't they, Lawrence? Always a good night at Gracie's.
Outstanding night. Big Johan. Great
Great.
into the game and how the club operate.
That was very interesting.
You know, he's worked under that regime as an assistant manager. So yeah, it's great just to get that kind of understanding and some things confirmed. But yeah, that is actually how we run as a football club. But
then you ask for questions from the audience, and one question always comes up: which Rangers player did you hate the most? It always comes up, and they always answer it as well. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30, as always. And thank you to Lawrence Conley and Liam Carrigan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.